In today's episode of Getting Geeky with Gamer Leave, I sit down with Luke to talk about Dwellings of Eldervale that's on Kickstarter a very short time now. Then we'll see what's on Kickstarter. But first, a message about our sponsors. This episode of Getting Geeky with Gamer Leaf is proudly being powered by Torres Games, who are bringing Serpent Master back to Kickstarter the first of next month. Serpent Master is a card-driven abstract board game for 1 to 4 players where a player must keep their serpent on top to win. Plus, they're doing a giveaway with us, or a few of them in fact, over there at thegiveawaygeek.com. Enter today and back their Kickstarter on the 1st of August.
Getting Geeky with Gamer Leaf, the podcast in which one man strives to level up his geekhood and helping you do the same, one battle at a time. Now, let's get geeky with Gamer Leaf.
Long ago, there was a thriving kingdom of sprawling cities, breathtaking landscapes, and unparalleled magic, known as Eldervale. The portal has been opened, and any faction representing the elements may appear. Fire and water, earth and air, order and chaos, light and darkness. We are not alone. Giant elemental beasts still lurk in these forgotten lands.
Did that sound familiar to you guys? It didn't to me either, but this is a story of Dwellings of Eldervale, and today we're lucky enough to have on the creator mastermind behind this game. Is that right, Luke? Is that how you fall in line with Dwellings of Eldervale?
Well, I'm not sure if I'd call myself a mastermind, but this world has evolved, and really it's become something far greater than we first imagined.
Awesome. Thank you so much for joining us on Getting Geeky with Gamer Leaf. We really appreciate it, Luke.
Thank you for having me.
No problem. Now, before we get into your game, let's rewind a little bit if we could. How did you get into playing tabletop board games, Luke?
Well, I came to gaming very early. So a lot of people are familiar with Stranger Things, and I really was a child of that generation and one of those lucky few to discover Dungeons and Dragons in the early 80s. So it was 1983, and I was at a friend's house, and a game of Dungeons and Dragons was going on, and I played my very first game. I believe it was the module, the Expedition to the Barrier Peaks. And I remembered I played an elf character. I think I was a wizard. I was super weak and terrible. I don't think I succeeded in anything I tried that night. And yet I was instantly hooked. And from there, I branched out over time, but I was a Dungeons and Dragons role-playing gamer. Played various other role-playing games, and on and off dabbled into board games for 30 some years after that. About the last 10 years or so, I moved a lot more into tabletop board games, and started with lighter games and party type games, and gradually found that my real love for board games really shines in deeper Euro type games, longer games, heavier games. I tend to find like a optimal game experience is 90 minutes to 2 hours, or sometimes the longer games. And those tend to be where I design games as well. So I tend to design mid-weight or mid/heavy games. And that's where I spend a lot of my attention.
Awesome. Why the transition from role-playing to board games, do you think?
Well, I know part of it had to do just kind of where things were in my life. So for many, many years, I had really similar groups that I played with when I played the role-playing games. And over times, my peer groups changed, people moved, So and I also had my own family, which grew up, and I found that the struggle to get together the same group and to keep playing the same campaigns, which is what I really loved to do when I was playing role playing games, became really a lot of work. When you're a dedicated game master and you're building your own campaigns and your own adventures, it takes a lot of time, a lot of attention, and then you struggle sometimes to implement that. So as I moved into board games, I was looking at something more like I can take this out of the box and I can play it. And if I can't get together the same group again week after week, that's okay, because we're just playing these one-shot games and every time is different. Um, Likewise, that ability to just play games with whomever opened up me going to lots of conventions and meeting lots of new people in the industry. And I found that I still wanted to do that kind of creativity that I had when I was playing role playing games, building campaigns and all of that. And so I turned that into becoming a board game designer. And so that's what I've been doing now for, somewhere around 7 years or so. I've been designing board games.
Okay, what are some of your past titles that you've worked on, Luke?
So, in terms of titles that are on the market, there aren't very many. So, I had a game called Stones of Fate. That was a light memory game that Cosmic Wombat Games put out about 5 years ago. I designed the Manhattan Project Energy Empire, which was published by Minion Games and became a follow-up to the big hit, The Manhattan Project. And Energy Empire was really well received. In 2016, Rahdo named it as his game of the year. I designed that working with co-designer Tom Jolly, who's a veteran designer, built games like Wiz War, Drakon Cave Trolls. Recently had a couple more games coming out. The Battle for Rokugan, I think, is the title of it. So anyway, working with Tom really opened up a lot of things. And now I have Dwellings of Eldervale coming out. But there are other games that I've finished and have signed with publishers that are just taking a long time to get to market. So I have a game that's with Bezier Games. They do things like Castles of Mad King Ludwig and the Werewolf games. And they have a game that I co-designed with Scott Caputo. And he's a great game designer. He recently did the 100 Tori, and he designed Veluspa and Whistle Stop. And then I have another game that should be coming out from Z-Man before too long. And that game is also co-designed with Tom Jolly. And I have other stuff on the way too. A lot of those coming projects, I can't really reveal the details of them, but they share some similarities to other projects I've done. They express my style as a designer, but they will have new innovations also that people haven't seen yet.
Well, that'd be cool to see. And when it comes to working with a publisher, how does that work? Once they sign your game or whatnot, do you just go back and forth on finishing up design, or how does something like that usually go down, Luke? If you don't mind us asking.
Well, it's frankly it's different with every publisher, and I have worked with several different publishers. So with some publishers, my involvement is instrumental. So when I've worked with Minion Games, for example, with the Manhattan Project Energy Empire, and then the expansion to that, the Cold War expansion, which was recently on Kickstarter in May. A lot of the development of that game, I kind of took the lead on that. So working with Tom Jolly and working with others in my playtesting groups, we did a lot of the development. And so I was pretty instrumental in that. Whereas working in some of the other projects with some of the larger publishers, they prefer to do a lot of the development in-house. And so instead of being involved in each step of the decisions, we'll see bits and pieces of those projects as they move through the process. And it's kind of we're more observers than we are active participants in those decisions. So another thing I wanted to point out is that sadly, the owner of Minion Games, James Matthey, he passed away a little over a month ago, and uh, the his absence leaves a big gap in our industry because he was kind of instrumental in helping people get started and figure things out. And he ran groups on Facebook and so on, and was always willing to help folks out.
Yeah, offered a lot of great advice and stuff. Yeah, we'll miss him.
So that said, I've been told that the projects that he had in the works are still moving forward. The expansion to Energy Empire will still be moving forward, and people can still look for Minion games on the game shelves, and they'll still be available.
Well, there you go. Yeah, so that'll be good. That's nice to know. So that's awesome. Now, speaking of games that you've handed over to the publisher and are working on that are out now or coming to Kickstarter, speaking of that, word on the street is you have a new game on Kickstarter just for a short, many more hours. Is Dwellings of Eldervale. What can you tell us about that game, Luke?
You know how a lot of times people go into game design and they have this idea that they have this grail game, this game that would be like their real dream, that if they could really have everything they wanted in a game, this would be the kind of thing that they would make. And for some people, that will guide their first game. You know, they'll do their best to try to make their very first game that baby that they're really trying to bring to market. I started small with design, and so Stones of Fate was a nice game and a fun game for my first game, and I've gradually built larger games, but I've tended to keep them constrained in that I want like an experience that's solid, but didn't necessarily go how should we say, like over the top. Um, Dwellings of Eldervale, which is my game that's on Kickstarter right now, and it's doing really well. It's over $400,000 dollars in funds raised and over 4,000 backers. This game it's everything I would want in a game. It has the Euro mechanics that I love. It has engine building. It has worker placement. It has individual player powers. It introduces some newer mechanics in the way that your worker placement interacts with your Tableau engine, and that you're placing your units out on a randomly created map. That every game you play is going to be on a different map of hexagonal tiles. The worker placement is spatial, so where you place determines where your subsequent placements can go. Your units are of different types with different powers. You have warriors and dragons and wizards. And there aren't too many games where your workers are very different. There are a handful. I think of like the Tuscany special workers that was an expansion to viticulture, where you could get your hands on a special worker. Well, in this, every worker is special in some way, and some are even extra special due to the individual player powers of the different factions, like the trolls or the ratlings or the centaurs. And then as you play, eventually you'll decide you're going to regroup and pull those units back, and you pull them back and you get to power your Tableau engine. You start out with some basic Tableau actions like building dwellings, gaining a few resources, and then as the game progresses, you can acquire all these different kinds of cards that add to this Tableau, modify this Tableau, and do all kinds of different things. But then in addition, something kind of like in the game Mystic Vale, you're able to modify the cards themselves. So you actually take tokens and you slot them onto the cards, and you're further modifying your customizable Tableau. So Dwellings of Eldervale has these great Euro mechanics, but then also it has that sense of that fear, that tension, in that you have this external threat of these giant monsters marching around the board, ready to crush you if you're not careful. In addition, your opponents, as they are occupying spaces on the board and you're looking at where they are, you can have battles break out with them. So the game isn't strictly like a war occupying territories game. It is a worker placement game, but conflicts break out when players are trying to make use of the same spaces on the board. So these conflicts are resolved with a dice battle system. It works in a manner that's very rapidly resolved, and then you have winning and losing, and you have this. The dice system is an underdog battle system. So at any given time when you go into battle, you stand a chance of losing. You can't buy your way into absolute guarantee of victory. Um, I have some personal pet peeves as I go to play games, and one of them is I play some games that have battle where the battle doesn't actually have tension because everyone at the table can actually mathematically determine the victory. And so you're watching that battle going, well, we know who's going to win that one. In Dwellings of Eldervale, there's never 100% certainty about how the battle will turn out. Now, some players might say, well, that's not very Euro, and I want to be able to win if I put the most in. But instead, what you focus on here is how do you balance your investment in the battle? What do you choose to risk? And what do you choose to hold back because you want to fear losing those things? And so that creates these dynamics and these kind of like sudden, exciting moments in the game where I know that even though I enjoy some drier Euros with a lot of that open information and calculability, in Dwellings of Eldervale, you have that. And then sometimes you have these really exciting moments where the tide turns. There's unlucky and lucky moments. Then there's card play that comes out of magic cards that can change the situation. Sometimes what looks like a loss is actually a victory because it's part of some kind of clever tactical approach. There's just lots of ways to go about playing this game.
Yeah, it sure looks like it. So that's awesome. Now, there's several different pledge levels. There's like this in normal, and then I have a deluxe as well as a legendary. And it looks like both of those include deluxe stretch goals and not just the standard. Do you know what the difference between the two different stretch goals are?
So there are a couple of stretch goals that are specific to the higher pledge levels because they involve the miniatures. So the lowest pledge level, and I always get the names of all these things mixed up because I know I'm the designer, not the publisher, and I love the game, and I don't always keep track of the little detailed things about how the production's going. But I know the lowest level pledge tier, I think it's called standard. That one doesn't actually have miniatures in it. It has standees. So you'd have a little card standee to represent the monsters. The deluxe pledge level has miniatures, and then the legendary pledge level has an additional set of miniatures along with these special colored bases that also produce sound effects that match the monsters. The pledge level that includes the monster miniatures is going to be available to receive some of the stretch goals that are miniature specific. So if I remember correctly, we have one upcoming, which is Frost Giant. And so at the time of this recording, my understanding is the level for Dwellings of Eldervale in pledge level is about $410,000. If it hits 435,000, that stretch goal is a Frost Giant that comes with an extra tile, which is the Bifrost Bridge. So that's like the Rainbow Bridge. That is, people who've seen the Thor and Avenger movies know that the Rainbow Bridge, bridges between the world and Asgard. And so in this, that tile and that miniature, those are going to come with the legendary pledge only, if I recall correctly. There is a final stretch goal that is the Mother of Dragons, and I think it might say the Mother of Monsters on the Kickstarter right now on the stretch goal.
You got Mother of Dragons. It does say Mother of Dragons.
It says Mother Dragons now. Okay, great. And that one, that dragon is a miniature that would be added to each of the pledge levels that has a miniature. So that means that so it would be a miniature in the pledge level that would include the the deluxe or the legendary. And then if you got the standard, it would show up as a standee. So, so that's the way that works. But almost all of the stretch goals are in all levels. So when people are looking at the Kickstarter page, if they're concerned about the stretch goals, almost every single one of them is for all editions of the game. And also not included on the map of stretch goals is there were social stretch goals, and they're also on the page in a slightly different location, slightly farther down. And all those unlocked things, most of those apply to all levels, except for example, there's a wash effect on the miniatures. That's only going to affect the miniatures, and so people who get the standard pledge without the minis aren't going to have wash effect.
Okay, and I know that on the Mother of Dragons, they don't have an amount unlocked yet. Do they give you any, you don't have any secrets, do you, on how much they have to get? I know the one before that is 465.
I don't. I don't.
Okay, all ears are peeled.
Yeah, let's see. We have the walls at 465, and then the Mother of Dragons. The level for that stretch goal hasn't been announced yet, and they are keeping it secret from me. And there's a good reason for that, and that's that I tend to give out spoilers. And I'll give your listeners and your listeners only a spoiler right now. So if this recording goes out soon, here's a little bit about that Mother of Dragons. So the Mother of Dragons is a monster that sits in her own lair. So she has her own lair, and that lair has special treasures in it that that you can only get by going into that lair, or by defeating the Mother of Dragons in battle. Here's the thing with the Mother of Dragons: is she's a tough monster. Super tough to beat in battle, like tougher than any of the monsters out there. She will re-roll ones in battle. That's a big boost. But the other thing is if you're playing and the Mother of Dragons is sitting over there in her lair, she will, and you play any unit in a ruin, no matter where the ruin is in Eldervale, the Mother of Dragons is going to fly over and attack you in that ruin. So a lot of the monsters in Dwellings of Eldervale, you can avoid them by kind of staying out of their radius. As long as you don't place right next to them, you're going to be safe. Well, the Mother of Dragons adds this whole level of danger to everyone, where she can attack you no matter which of these ruins you go in. The other thing is you defeat her in battle, she doesn't die. She goes back to her lair. You have to beat her several times before she will be taken out of the game. And so having her in the game is a definite shift. It's like a special scenario where everyone's trying to go about their business, but everyone's going to be afraid of this dragon for a long time. And so the dragon may survive being in the game for quite a bit of the game. You know, she could be out there half the game. She could be out there the entire game, unless people were to make like a concerted effort to try to take her down.
Okay, awesome. And how what triggers the end of the game, and how do we know who wins?
So normally the way the game of Dwellings of Eldervale triggers is players will repeatedly go to the dungeon as the game progresses. And every time you go into the dungeon, you're going on an adventure and you're exploring Eldervale. And then you're taking one of the hexagonal realm tiles and you're adding it to the map. Well, when that stack runs out, that's one of the end game triggers. So what would happen is the player took the last tile, adds it to the map, then everyone gets one more turn, including the player who had placed that tile that triggered the end. The other way that the game ends is if any player successfully builds 6 dwellings. So building dwellings is tricky because every time you construct a dwelling, doing so actually gives up a worker. The workers actually become the dwellings because the little rooftop pieces go right over a meeple. And so the meeple becomes a dwelling, and then you've lost that meeple. But eventually, if you turn all 6 of your worker meeples into dwellings, that triggers the end of the game, and then you go around one more time. That that ending of the game is less frequent, but it happens in some games, especially in games where players are using the Oracle tile. And the Oracle is a Kickstarter exclusive realm tile that allows players to gain tableau cards without progressing the game. You don't add to the map, and so you're not moving the clock forward quite as rapidly. So that's a special way of extending the game length a little bit, and it tends to add about 20% of length to the game. A lot of people who play this game, they have played, they really enjoy the game, and if they're really hungry for it, they will want a longer game. So pushing it past 2 hours into a slightly longer experience, allowing you to go a little deeper into building your tableau and so on. And then also giving you more of a chance that you might trigger the end of the game by building all of your dwellings.
And at the end, is it whoever has the most dwellings or victory points, or how do you determine the winner?
So the winner is determined by a whole breadth of different things. So there's scoring that comes from your dwellings and from your tableau cards that's based on how you've progressed on elemental power tracks. The elemental power tracks are on a board that looks something like an 8-pointed star, and you have markers that are able to move up these tracks, showing how powerful you are in the different elements like fire and earth and chaos and light. And so as you move up these tracks, those positions on the tracks become multipliers, where you take that value, and that is the value times the number of dwellings and number of tableau cards you've acquired. In addition, there's scoring that occurs at the time you construct dwellings based on your tactics. So if you've placed a dwelling in a good position, as it relates to how many different ruins it is adjacent to and how many different dwellings it's adjacent to, that gives you immediate scoring at the time you construct it. So dwellings score twice. They score during the game when you build it. They score at the end of the game based on your power. Then there's also scoring that can occur based on your tableau cards, in terms of like tokens that you've slotted on them. There's special cards called vaults where you can kind of store up resources for points. And then there also is hidden scoring in the game in the form of prophecies. So in your hand of magic cards at the end of the game, you might have these prophecy cards, and you reveal them at the end of the game to show these kind of hidden goals that you've acquired and accomplished for various bonuses.
Oh wow, yes, that sounds quite the game. I know you've sold me, and just scrolling through the Kickstarter page, I've been sold. So anybody still listening, we still have them on. They're on the edge of they're on the edge of their seats right now. What's the elevator pitch on what makes Dwellings of Eldervale pop as a game my audience should go check out? And if they like what they see, back it within the next 65 hours or so, because it's very short time that'll be on Kickstarter.
Well, if you like a game that has a fantasy theme, if you like sophisticated worker placement mechanics, and you don't mind rolling some dice and slugging it out in some battles against some giant monsters, then this is the game for you.
Most definitely. And we'll make sure we leave all the links in the show notes so they can go ahead and jump on over. Like I said, you don't want to dilly-dally on this one, and help us get to that. We don't know where it'll be, but so we can get that Mother of Dragons unlocked for sure. Now, mine is coming there to your hometown, Luke. How can people go about keeping up with you and other games you might have coming out in the future?
Well, if people are out on the West Coast, I tend to go to events in the San Francisco Bay Area. So I don't actually live in the Bay Area. I live farther south in Santa Barbara County in California. But I run a Protospiel event at Pacificon. And so Pacificon is Labor Day weekend in Santa Clara, which is right near San Jose. And that's there's an event there inside. It's a regular game convention, but inside there, I run an event that's all about playtesting prototypes. And so a whole bunch of fantastic designers attend that event. Then in Memorial Day weekend in May is KublaCon, and I usually find my way out to KublaCon, and I ran a protospiel there also this year. So I'm pretty easy to find online, so people can check out my Twitter feed or find me in Facebook groups and so on. I'm always happy to talk about my games. I'm also happy to take a look at other people's projects, and I love games. I love game design, and I enjoy being a part of the community.
Awesome. Yeah. And looking at this game, it looks like the community enjoys you as well. Just looking at how much funded this is on Dwellings of Eldervale is on Kickstarter thus far. I know you said you don't have you can't share much with us, but do you know what game might be coming out next from you?
Well, so there probably the next would be released would be the expansion to Energy Empire, which is called the Cold War expansion, and that should be coming out sometime next year. It was on Kickstarter in May. It did really well. Brought in, I think, $90,000. So we had a lot of backers for that. Energy Empire is really popular, and it's now been made in a couple of different languages. So I know that a company called Do It Games is producing a Spanish version for Energy Empire. So they're based out of Spain, not out of Mexico or Latin America, but they're producing a Spanish version of Energy Empire right now. And so that expansion will probably be the next thing. And then I've got other new games that are in the prototype form, and who knows where they'll be a couple years from now.
Oh, okay, so make sure you're following him. But yeah, we don't, like I said, we don't want to keep you all day, but we really appreciate you coming on, getting geeky with Gamer Leap with us to talk all about Dwellings of Eldervale that'll be on Kickstarter through this Thursday at 10:34 a.m. Mountain Standard Time. We really appreciate it, Luke.
And I appreciate it also. Thank you so much for having me on.
No problem. If you like what you heard, make sure you head on over and back Dwellings of Eldervale before this Thursday, because if you snooze, you lose. It won't be on Kickstarter then. Now, let's go with Batterina Leaf, shall we? Where are we going, Batterina Leaf?
Kickstarter corner!
You've got dice. You've got plenty of solid colored dice. I knew that. But what you don't have enough of is multicolored dice. How could you? That's what I thought. Well, fret no longer, as Bryce's Dice are now on Kickstarter with Anthology of Dice The Beginning, which is a line of polyhedral dice sets with tricolor and dual color effects for Bryce's Dice. Y'all made tie-dyed shirts as kids? Well, now Bryce's Dice are going to make you the equivalent to bring to game night. If you like the sound of that, make sure you head on over to check out their campaign via the link in our show notes. If they get enough backers through this link, we might even do a giveaway with them over at thegiveawaygeek.com. Once you've backed it, make sure you comment on their Kickstarter page, letting them know that GamerLeaf sent you. In the near future, cloning dinosaurs is cheap, easy, and commonplace. As public demand for even state-of-the-art dinosaur zoos waned, underground fight clubs quickly became popular and began producing huge dividends. Trainers began making highly illegal genetic modifications to their dinosaurs' stock. Numerous high-profile accidents calls for international cooperation in regulating the new industry. With millions of dollars involved, several countries began to legalize prehistoric pit fighting. Specialized training schools appeared, and soon dinosaur fighting was legal worldwide. The Ultimate Dinosaur Fighting League was formed, and in just a few years became the world's largest professional sports organization. The most successful dinosaurs and their trainers are some of the world's richest, most famous, or infamous celebrities in the world. Will you be among them? Did that sound familiar to you? Well, good thing I'm here then. This is a story of Ultimate Dinosaur Fighting. It's a miniature board game for 2 to 6 players with play time of 30 to 45 minutes, no downtime, and no player elimination. If you dare try Ultimate Dinosaur Fighting, you'll step into a world where you control these ancient beasts, where every stamp of the foot, twitch of the tail, or flap of the wings could be their last. The game is easy to learn, fast-paced, quick to set up, has a high replay value, and is just great fun. You can play one-off scrimmage battles, a series of battles in a tournament setting, or use their campaign rules to run a stable of dinosaurs through an entire league season. You can add in mutations, tech upgrades, and training to ready your prized prehistoric gladiator to take on any beast in the pit. Sound fun? I thought so. So make sure you back their Kickstarter campaign for Ultimate Dinosaur Fighting before Thursday the 15th of August. Tell them GamerLeaf sent you. Are you prepared to crush your enemies, see them driven before you, and hear the lamentations of their dice? Then you're not going to want to miss the next Kickstarter game coming to you from S7 Games. It's called Conan Savage Legends, in which you take control of a legend in Robert E. Howard's Hyborian age as you seek to destroy your enemies in a fast-paced fight to the death. In this 2 to 4 player arena-style combat miniature game, you will use powerful relics and plundered riches to engage foes in glorious combat. Destroy your opponents with sheer might or cunning tactics and prove to your foes why you deserve the title Savage Legend. Are you game enough for Conan Savage Legends? Prove it now by backing Conan Savage Legends on Kickstarter before August 8th. Plus, don't miss my sit-down with someone from S7 Games when we dive deep in the episode entitled, What Kind of Legend Are You? If you liked any of the games we talked about in today's episode, make sure you check out their Kickstarter campaigns to show them and us a little love. Backing them goes a long way. Plus, make sure to stay up to date on all the giveaways we're doing over at thegiveawaygeek.com. There will be at least 2 to 3 new giveaways going live over there next week. It's our least favorite time as well as yours, so until next episode, make sure you go ahead and get geeky, stay geeky, and bring others in the geek fold by sharing our episodes with others, as well as keeping up with the giveaways we're doing over at thegiveawaygeek.com. GamerLeaf out.
GamerLeaf levels up. Tune in next week to see if GamerLeaf's luck holds up.